U.S. schools are producing 4,000 to 5,000 new technicians a year. Industry needs, based on our research and estimates today, about 100,000. So U.S. schools are producing about 5% of the total number needed.
Hi, everyone. This is Tom Weirs with the Trucks Roll Podcast. Today, I'm bringing Tim Spurlock to you from American Diesel Training Centers in Columbus, Ohio. I met Tim several years ago, and he and his partner started a very unique and innovative way to train diesel technicians. So we're going to break this podcast up into a couple different sections. The first section, we're really going to focus on and discuss the overall tech shortage problem, not only in the United States, but around the globe. So I hope you enjoyed this first session with Tim, and here it is. Enjoy the podcast. Hi, welcome to the Trucks Roll Podcast. I'm Tom Weirs. I'm excited to bring some great content with you today. We've got Tim Spurlock with American Diesel Training Centers. He's going to share some of his business model and experience with a big problem within the industry, which is diesel technicians, finding them, growing them, and helping the industry out, because there's definitely a shortage. So, Tim, welcome to the Trucks Roll Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on board. And why don't you make a little introduction of yourself, if you don't mind?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Great to be with you. Yeah, so my name's Tim Spurlock. I always start out my introductions in that I don't have a ton of experience in terms of working on trucks, physical vehicles. But what I do have is 25 years plus experience in higher education, and specifically skilled trades training. And so that's really where I cut my teeth and developed a model for American Diesel Training Centers. We founded the business in 2017, and we've had quite a ride, especially over the last 2 years.
So, Tim, tell me, when did you discover this, shortage of technicians and think about coming up with a solution on your own? I'd love to hear that journey and about American Diesel Trucks Training Centers.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually kind of a global journey, right? So, I ran sales for what I would call kind of a boutique global company that produced curriculum for schools that produce automotive and truck mechanics, right? So think textbooks, software. We had clients all around the world, but they were mostly schools, probably 95% schools. We started getting calls and emails from companies, service managers saying, "Hey, we'd like to buy your product to train our employees." And the first thing we said was, we don't really think it's appropriate. I mean, end to end, it was probably 40 hours of video, 3,000 pages of textbooks. We don't really think it's appropriate. And they would always say, "We don't care. We're hiring people off the streets." And so I got really interested in that. And then kind of fast forward a little bit, same company. And I was just kind of testing the market, like, should we create a product that we pointed towards industry? So we were meeting with a trucking company here in Columbus, Ohio. And the exact same thing. We're meeting with the owner, and he was like, "The training's okay," but he goes, "I can't find anybody." And he said, "I had a kid show up. He had very little training. He had this little tiny hand tool set. He said he'd done an automotive program in high school." And I asked him, I said, "Will you show up on time and come to work every day?" And the kid said yes. And so he said, I hired him. And I was like, there's really a interesting and meaningful problem that we could potentially solve here. And then, again, we were a global company, so we did a lot of work around the world. So I'm sitting in Cape Town, South Africa, in the launch of a new apprentice training facility. Their system's different down there. But anyways, the CEO of the largest importer of vehicles in Africa, Imperial Motors, stood up in front of everyone and talked about the shortage of skilled artisans in South Africa. I'm like, you literally can't get farther apart in the world than the United States and South Africa. And they both have the exact same problem. And so that's where it all started. Yeah. So I put together a kind of a plan for my company at that time to produce products for this market. Got shot down. And I said, I think I'm just going to go do this on my own.
That's fantastic. So this is a global problem. It's not just a United States or Indiana, Ohio problem is what I'm hearing you say.
Huge. Yeah. It's a huge global problem. It literally doesn't matter what corner of the globe you go to.
And
Africa, Brazil, South America, the UK, everywhere. Australia, it's a global problem.
So, we in the industry, we use the technician shortage. I mean, that gets thrown around a lot, but is it really technician shortage, or is it growing demand? Is it a shortage because there's not enough coming into the workforce? Is it a shortage because the demand is just growing faster than the supply? Or can you tell us a little bit about, as you guys have studied this problem, what's going on out in the marketplace with diesel technicians? Yeah. And I don't know, I say diesel technicians, maybe it's all technicians, but I guess we're most interested in the diesel perspective.
You're completely right, Tom. So you can swap out diesel technicians for skilled trades, right? So automotive techs, diesel techs, HVAC, power gen, heavy equipment off highway, all that stuff. Just swap them all out. They're all interchangeable, right? But yeah, so you're exactly right. And I've read so many articles about this and done so much research on it. And the term gets thrown around a lot. And I think that if I had one piece of advice that I really want people to get their heads around, is that the system is broken, right? It has failed. And when I say system, I mean the U.S. educational system, which companies have relied on for their talent, has broken. I don't know that it's anyone's fault, but we can tell anecdotes all the time, right? Kids don't grow up today working on cars, right? I have two boys, and one's 21, 22, the other one's 20. None of their friends work on cars. So I don't think there's as much interest from young people to work on cars. It's really typically it is you replace parts these days, right? But here, the biggest problem is it's an input problem, right? There are roughly 225, depending on where you look, schools that produce diesel technicians. For example, Columbus, Ohio, where I live, there's not one high school diesel program in the entire city, right? Not one, and it's the 13th largest city in the United States. So most of these programs are post-secondary. So the problem really boils down to there are not enough people entering at the front end of the pipeline, and there are definitely not enough people leaving at the back end of the pipeline for industry to be able to hire and then bring in, right? And I'm talking U.S. schools are producing 4,000 to 5,000 new technicians a year. Industry needs, based on our research and estimates today, about 100,000.
So Tim, tell me, how many technicians are there in the United States right now, diesel technicians? If we need 100,000 and we're only producing 4 or 5, how many what's the total population?
So there's decent data on this. The U.S. Department of Labor says there are roughly about 250,000 working diesel mechanics in the United States. We use Indeed as the best gauge for what the market demand is because we all know that government takes a ton of time to produce these reports. A lot of times they're very inaccurate. Yeah. But we've tracked Indeed since we started the business. And last week when I looked, I've never seen it ever this high. It was 55,000 posted openings on Indeed. If you go to Indeed and put in diesel mechanic in the United States, right? And as you know, you're not going to post every position you have in your entire – let's say you have 20 openings or 10 openings. You're not going to post them all on Indeed. You're going to post maybe 1, 2 to 3. So we think the true number is really a factor of 2 or 3 times what shows up on Indeed. To me, the point to call out here is that this is February. This isn't summer. This should be one of the lowest months in terms of demand on job boards. And in the entire time we've tracked it, I'd never seen it go above 45,000, and almost overnight last week it went up to 55,000. I think by summer you'll probably see 70 to 75,000 just posted openings on Indeed. Wow. Tom. Yeah.
So let me backtrack a little bit. If there are 250,000 diesel technician jobs, and there's, let's say, just use simple math, that's 50,000 openings right now. That's 20%, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Wow. That's that's pretty consistent with where we're at right now. I think we have about 20% or 80% of our technician jobs filled, and we're looking for about 20% more. So that kind of makes sense, at least as it compares to yours. Hey, thank you for tuning in. Part 1 of the podcast with Tim Spurlock. Next session, we're going to be talking about how they are actually working on solutions to solve this problem. So it's a really good session with Tim. In the meantime, if you need anything from us, Weirs.com is our website. Please go there, check it out. We'd love to help you with your commercial truck needs. And again, this is Tom Weirs. Thanks for coming along for the ride on the Trucks Roll podcast.